Welcome back to another episode of I Swear I'm Real podcast. I'm your host, Alex Vaughan. I use they, them pronouns, and we are talking to Sty Els today. Sty, I'm gonna I'll do a little intro. You are a
Okay.
parent, you're a personal trainer, a queer NB, and you could tell everyone what NB means if you feel so inclined. You're the owner of Metamorphosis Gym in Denver, Colorado, and where you have a lot of fun on your social media with all the things gym related, and we'll get there too. But so I'm just gonna. We've been friends for a long time. We've done drag together. We've been in the community a long time together. Lots of parallels, and I'm so excited that you're here with me. So I'm just going to hand the mic over to you and tell us your story. What do you want people to know?
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it. Gosh, so so non-binary, NB, right? That's the short term for it. I have it tattooed on my hands just in case I'm out in the community and anybody needs to know, find another safe person, especially going into the bathrooms these days. Then they know that I am a safe person. But my story, honestly, my coming out story started when I was 18. And
Okay.
I came out as a lesbian to my family. And lived for a very long time in that community, fighting for equal rights as a queer 20 and 30 something year old. And then I had children. And my youngest came out when they were 6 years old. And on a drive home from school one day said, "You know, Mama, I don't feel like a boy." And I said, "Okay." And they said, "I don't feel like a girl either." And I said, "Okay." And they said, "Well, what does that make me?" And I had
Mhm.
really just
Oh,
recently
wow.
learned the new terminology, so I threw in there, "Well, sounds to me like you're non-binary, and let's talk about that." And so we had a conversation on the way home about how they felt and their gender and presentation. And um, by the time we got home, I said, Mama has a secret to tell you. I am also non-binary." And that was really the impetus for me bringing that publicly, was to support my youngest, who at the time was playing with the idea of gender and how their gender was going to be represented in the world. And so it seemed like really the best time for me to come out and
Mhm.
go on to the next leap onto the next pad of my journey and my transition, because as I've heard you say multiple times, we are ever evolving and always growing. And so that sort of started my next chapter. That 6 year old is now 12. And so I've been really living authentically my truth for the last 6 years.
Yeah. It's really I think people underestimate how much our children are supposed to change us in lots of different ways.
Yeah, I really don't think that I understood what it meant to be selfless until I had my children.
Hmm.
And then you really learn how to give more than you ever thought that you could give, and find room to keep giving. And I think that my whole attitude on social justice and um, the status of the world, right? I became a lot more awake and aware, because that's what they're going to inherit. And so
Yeah.
that was actually my reintroduction back into drag when we first met, after having taken a hiatus for 13 years, was that I really wanted to create a world of love and acceptance and joy in the queer community, especially because I was raising my children in that community, and I
Mhm.
wanted them to see the good side and the bright side and the loving and the kind side. So
Yeah.
um, they do. They definitely change everything about who you are as a human being.
Yeah. So kid comes out, so drop us into like then how you're becoming, you're unraveling, or whatever word you use for it.
Yeah. Well, I think I being in the drag community, and already having had a background in doing drag, I really was flirting with my masculinity and my masculine side a lot. And what I had started to realize through getting back into drag was that I felt more comfortable when I was in drag, and I
Hmm.
felt a pretty profound sense of loss when I wasn't. And
Oh,
so I think
yeah.
that was kind of what was starting to percolate in my brain was why do I feel more comfortable when I have these clothes on and this makeup on and my hair a certain way, um, my body language a certain way, when I'm presenting more masculine? Why is this now where I feel more at home?
Hmm.
And why, when I am not, and I'm back in, at that time, the female world with dresses and high heels and doing everything,
Yeah.
why does this suddenly feel foreign and a lot more restrictive? And so I think that was really the beginning for me of understanding that I was definitely changing and evolving into a different sense of self
Hmm.
through doing that drag, and that really I think was the impetus for it. I was very fortunate in that my partner, now husband, is transmasculine and was also in the process of transitioning, and so I always had this really great support system through him, and we kind of took the journey together. His journey went a little different than mine, but we've always been on sort of this parallel that's taken us into who we are.
Yeah. So, I was going to ask you a question. I totally left my brain. And so it goes. Um, so I'm gonna have to edit this part out. Um, 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 if why did I just blank out? I'm sorry.
You're
Um,
fine.
you were talking about, oh wow. Okay, help me out here. Where do you want to go next?
I mean, we can talk about sort of
Oh,
the.
go
Oh
ahead.
no, go. You go.
I remember because I was about because this so much of your relationship between like as an athlete and then
Mhm.
with being, how that informed your job and then your process of evolution, but also in your gender as well. Do you think that?
Yeah. Oh yeah, 100%. I mean,
Yeah.
for me, the same time that I was flirting with the idea that I might be non-binary or transmasculine, and I really kind of had been going back and forth between the two, and what really felt like the right coat to wear.
Mm.
Um, I at the same time was preparing for my last bodybuilding show, and so physically I was transforming into, what most people would say is a much more masculine physique and a much more masculine look. And so as that was progressing, I think that my gender dysphoria was being quieted a little bit, and my
Mm.
body dysmorphia was being quieted a little bit because I was definitely starting to look a lot more masculine in my presentation. And so the combination of being a bodybuilder, former competitive athlete, personal trainer, owning my gym, so really focusing a lot on building a more masculine looking body through exercise and fitness, was I think all of that came together in a sort of glorious, perfect scenario where all of the parts of the puzzle just nicely clicked into place. And having my youngest say to me, "Here's how I feel," that was really, I think, the last the last key in the lock
Yeah.
that just solidified everything, because it gave me permission to just release the dam and just tear down the dam and let the water flow. And that's what I did. I went from feminine to nothing feminine in a matter of months, because I'd been holding on to it for so long, and I'd been
Mhm.
trying to find my release for my gender dysphoria in so many different ways through so many different methods, personal training, bodybuilding, playing these sports, roller derby, everything that I could think of that was sort of giving me that more masculine energy, drag, all of it.
Mhm.
Um, and it was really just all leading me to this one point. And to have a 6-year-old just nail that point so succinctly and so precisely, that was my undoing, and that
Yeah.
was my salvation.
Yeah. Gosh, that resonates so deeply with me too, because I had very similar, like in drag, athlete, like, and then once my daughter came out, and it sounds like they're the same age. I likened it to like the, Brene Brown Midlife Unravel blog that she wrote, where the universe is like, hey, taps you on the shoulder, says, "Hey, I'm not fucking around anymore. You're either going to do this or you're not."
Yeah,
And so on one hand, you could say, "Oh, your kid came before you," but then it's like you come before the kid because you're now showing up for your kid. And
right.
yeah, and so I was like, I can't raise this kid because I can't raise this kid, and she's gonna like, but like the feeling I had was she's gonna see right through me if I
Yeah.
don't do this. Yeah.
Yeah, and the truth of it is that our children told us because they trusted us, because they
Mhm.
knew
Yep.
us, and they felt us, and they could tell that we possessed the energy to take that truth of theirs and hold it sacred, and nurture it and love it and let it grow into whatever it was going to grow into.
Yeah.
And I think, a lot of times, especially in today's society, unfortunately, we don't give children enough credit to understand that they know who they are.
Yep.
And who they are might ebb and flow, and it might change. My youngest now does not identify as non-binary, and has sort of circled back around, and has embraced sort of his masculinity, and has changed pronouns back to he him. And I think that's fabulous. I think it's phenomenal that we give our children the freedom to explore who they are, to explore what makes them comfortable, what makes them uncomfortable. And I think, our children, because we show up for them every day, and because we love them
Yeah.
through everything, and they know that they're safe with us, and that's why they feel comfortable coming out to us. And I know that's how my kiddo, I don't think my kiddo would have felt comfortable coming out to anyone else. But I think partially it was because I think he saw my struggle
Mhm.
far, far better and
Mhm.
far more clear than I ever did. And I think that he, in a way, was telling me how he was feeling, to give me permission to let it go. I really
Yeah.
firmly believe that he knew who I was far before I had figured it out.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and it's so healing because then they they share, and then it touches on the part of me, of us, that where maybe our parents or caregivers didn't have that capacity to be like, yes, go explore and be yourself. And so sometimes I kind of like the inner children are kind of dancing together like, I don't know, it's this whole full circle thing.
Yeah.
But
No, it's true though. And
yeah.
it gives you an opportunity to really see your children through a different lens when you watch them get to explore gender without worry of ostracization or judgment. My littlest has gone through these ebbs and flows of different clothing options, different hairstyles, different pronouns, and I always have trusted that at the end of the day, he would figure out who he was, and who he is today at 12 may not be who he is at 23, but The idea that he sort of has the freedom to do that is, I think, something that I wish that I had had when I was
Yeah.
young. You know, when I was 5 years old and refused to wear my bikini top because I wanted to be a boy when I grew up. And I remember people asking me when I was young, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" And I remember for a very long time, my answer was a boy, because that was what I wanted more than anything in this world. Um, and then I remember vividly the day that I was told that that was not an acceptable answer, and
Yeah.
that I would never have the chance to grow up and be a boy. So I needed to put that in a box and hide it away in my soul, and
Mhm.
never speak of it again. And that box sat there for 32 years. And
Yeah.
then one day, a little 6-year old came and cracked it open.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
yeah.
I kind of, like the last s- statistic that I read, there's about 3 million trans people. That's of 13 and older in the US right now, like
Mhm.
2.6, 2.7. Oh yeah.
Yep, yep.
And there's a part of me that's like, I think it's more like 50. Like 50% of the population is trans, because that's only like 3 million. I went from 3 million to 50%, but um just the people who lack maybe the ability to reflect, or they just can't even. I don't know, I think there's so many more. That's why we do this podcast. We share the stories, so there's visibility and openness and love all and flowing through.
Right,
That's
and we have to remember that the trans experience is different for every single
Yeah.
one of those 3 million people, right?
Yeah.
Every single one of those journeys is different. And there's so many mitigating factors that determine what your journey is, from your upbringing, from what religion or non-religion you came from, the household, the siblings, genetics. Like there's so many experiences that you had growing up. There's so many things that go into the trans experience. And I think um, we forget that there's a whole generation of trans folks out there that were never ever given the option to be authentically who they were. That was just a non-option. And so I would say, to piggyback on what you did, I think that I'm 50. I think that the generation above me, I think there
Mhm.
is a large percentage of people that probably had their circumstances and their life and societal pressures been different, I suspect that they would have transitioned in their
Yeah.
younger life. I know I would have, if I had any representation, if I had any um, person who was in my life that could show me um, how important it was to be authentically myself. I think I would have transitioned a long time ago.
Yeah. Same. Yeah. Instead, you just hold on to it and you stare at men like, I don't want to be with you, but I want to look like you. And I don't really
Yeah,
know what to do with this. So I'm just going to be
right.
quiet.
Yeah, yeah. I had yeah, a lot of male energy envy for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. So, okay, I'm gonna ask like a really energy question, because I know you live in this space too. You talk about it a lot. So like when you look into your internal world, what do you see? What does it look like? What does it feel like?
That's a good question. I've been going through this really interesting phase lately where I'm more embracing the calm of finding peace and being non-binary. Even though I have been living my authentic non-binary self for 6 years,
Yeah.
I definitely have moments where I really am frustrated and angry about the fact that I cannot get this brain, this heart, this soul to align with a binary gender.
Mm.
It would be so much easier. Like if I could just be a man or be a woman, like I feel like um, people that I interact with would have an easier time understanding and accepting me,
Yeah.
from my family to people I interact with in public. Um, I have been seeing a pretty big uptick lately in conversations about the validity of non-binariness. Um, and it's a lonely place to be, right? It's a
Mhm.
lonely place to be when you truly don't fit in one of those binary structures. And so I think I've been doing a lot of self reflection lately on the fact that it's okay to be frustrated, it's okay to be upset, it's okay to um, miss having that kinship of a gender.
Mm.
And that it's my charge to continue to move forward as my authentic self, because when I'm teaching my children and when I'm teaching other people in the community is that there's nothing more important than your authenticity. There's nothing more important than being so true to your core value of who you are, because that's at the end of the day all that you have. It is your authentic self, and nobody else is gonna do it for you. Nobody else is gonna provide it for you. Um, do I have days where it's tough? Yeah. Do I have days where I feel more masculine and I'm like, oh, maybe I am a trans man? Yes. Do I have days where I'm feminine? No.
Yeah.
That's
That part.
no, no, that part's done. But I definitely have days where I lament being non-binary, because it can be lonely sometimes. But I'm so at peace with who I am as a human being, and I'm so at peace with what I've become, and I feel so strongly about what I do for my community and how I show up for my community every day, that I think I've achieved, I've unlocked a new level of peace.
Yeah. Unlocked a new level of peace. Exactly. Yeah. I find that too. It's I don't know. I started reading Dr. AC Fawkes. I might forgive me if I'm mispronouncing it. Fowlkes. His new book, Transgender Inclusion. And
I haven't read it yet, but I saw. Do you like
yeah,
it?
I do. I'm just in the beginning part where it's just basically discussing, statistics of the number of trans people in the US, and then going into of the trans population, how many are non-binary. And
Mm,
it's almost like how did I end up with the non-binariness? Like it's rare, and
right.
obviously you view it as a gift, but it's also like motherfucker, like it's not many.
No, no, I know. Um, there is so much pressure, right? Because of this sort of patriarchy that we live in, there's so
Mhm.
much pressure to conform. And I even have people who message me on social media all the time that tell me that they come out as a trans man because
Mhm.
it's just easier for them than to try to explain what being non-binary is, because they come from, excuse me, a family or a community that just doesn't understand the in between, and they don't get the in between. And so they've come out as trans mass because that's just a much easier way to describe how they're feeling. And that makes me sad, because I think um, there's a lot of freedom in being non-binary. There's a lot of freedom from oppression, freedom from misogyny, freedom from the patriarchy, because we truly reject the notion of gender altogether. And I find that to be incredibly liberating.
Absolutely. I've been spending a lot more time lately with like Soul's plan, and how we basically the energy of who we are, you know, coming to earth to inhabit a body kind of thing. And that in soul world there is no gender.
Yeah.
Like you're just literally energy, and then you express your energy. It can, then we label it as masculine, feminine, like, you know, all these different things. But um yeah, I guess it's that, just sometimes I feel like I'm gripping a raft. Like I'm just like, I'm not gonna let go because I finally
Right.
found my raft.
I know. I know. Have you, I mean, and there's so many, the thing that I love is that there's so many, books that are out there in the world now, right? That
Mhm.
support the non-binary experience and the non-binary existence. I just finished this yesterday, before we were trans, by Dr. Kit Hyam, and it is amazing. And it talks a lot about the non-binary experience, and it talks a lot about sort of historically, how many people in this world have actually lived or passed as trans, but really, when you kind of look at the totality of their life, it was much more likely that they were non-binary,
Hmm.
and gender non-conforming, because a lot of it was pre-gender norms, right? So they had, you know, people who were born female but lived their lives with a lot of masculine energy and were respected, in masculine roles, but never really identified necessarily as a man. They were just given that title because of their energy that they held. And so there's a lot of just really, I think, good for people who are interested, really, really good information out there that really does sort of support the non-binary existence. So I, like you, am holding on to this raft and I will not let go because it has given me a level of authenticity that I have never, um, experienced before, and just a level of liberation that makes me so intensely happy and so
Yeah.
fulfilled. Um, I don't remember a time in my life where I felt this complete.
Yeah. It's extraordinary, and I think also sad when people don't know that level of inner peace. Like
Right.
how, and then also how much work it takes to get there. Um and you know, people throw around the word authenticity, but I'm like, no, authenticity is like, it doesn't give a fuck who you are. It just stands. Like it just exists, and it's the most peaceful thing ever. And if you find that, I feel like if we find that here on this, in our earth, our kindergarten called earth, um what an amazing, amazing thing.
Yeah, and you know, I like the best way that I can describe it to people when they ask me is I walked through fire to claim my authenticity.
Mhm.
I walked through hell to grab that mantle, and I, in that moment, the entire world can be burning around me, and as long as I am standing and holding on to that authenticity of myself, like that level of peace is just so profound that everything around me could be crumbling, and it's okay, and I can handle it, and I'm going to get through it because I'm not pretending who I am anymore,
Mhm.
and all of the walls are down, the pretenses are down. I am who I am, and you get who you get. And um, I don't think you can ever understate how freeing that is.
Yeah. What are so you on social media, on TikTok, I'm just going to talk about this a little bit because you, I love watching your videos, and you talk, what are you like, how would you describe what you do on there? Because you answer questions and providing education, but then also I feel like you bring, well, speaking of authenticity, like a grit and a, you know, what, how does that feel for you, going interacting with people, and what are your favorite types of stupid or lovely comments that you get? That was a
Um,
lot.
no, and I appreciate that you call it grit. I am pretty much just, I think, a smart ass big mouth. Um, my first account, and my second account, got um, nuked at like 24,000 followers. Um, and I got taken down by a transphobe who thought that I hurt her feelings with one of my comments,
Oh,
back
jeez.
to one of her comments. And then she aggressively nuked my second account just for shits and giggles. And so
Oh my God.
um, yeah, I like to do a lot of education. My favorite is statistics. I love statistics and
Hmm.
data. I all day long will shoot statistics and data into my videos and into my comments because I think that you can't lie about what the numbers are, right? The numbers are the numbers, and as long as they've been reviewed and validated, it numbers and data stand for themselves. So that's one of my favorite things, is to just sling data all around. I do like to get a little bit cheeky with people who are highly transphobic, or who think
Yeah.
that they can talk about our experiences in a very dehumanizing way without ever having experienced, I'm sure, a conversation with another trans person. Um, and I find social media to be a good place to people always tell me, why do you spend the energy to refute these people? I'm not refuting those people. I'm not talking to those people in my response videos. I'm talking to the 10 people that are on the fringe, that are watching
Yeah.
this interaction, that aren't quite sure how they're feeling about how they're feeling about trans folks, the trans experience. I'm talking to those people, because those are the people who then come into my um, messages later and say, oh my gosh, thank you so much, I never knew that, I now see things in a different way, thank you for explaining that. As snarky as I can be, I actually have a lot of people that tell me that they really appreciate that I educate without being rude and obnoxious. Every now and then I'll
Mhm.
pull that out, but for the most part, I get a lot of people who say, I don't feel like I can come to ask anybody else's question. So that makes me feel like I'm approachable for the people who have good intentions.
Mhm.
I am obnoxiously snarky to the people who don't. And and I'm pretty good at telling the difference between the two. My favorite that I get a lot are, the comments about confusion. You have no idea who you are. These
Yeah.
are people who have no understanding how much time and energy and reflection is required to be trans, right? It's
Yeah.
not this sort of, I woke up one day and thought, well, this is going to be a fun experience to,
Right? It's so just like
I'd love to be
lacking so
dehumanized
much self-aware.
daily, daily basis and threatened. Like, let's do it. Why not? That's always sort of a big struggle for me. And so I really love being able to address those questions. I love being able to address trans youth, because I am
Mhm.
highly passionate about trans youth. We
Yeah.
were all trans youth, right?
Yep.
Any person today that is over the age of 18 that is trans was a trans youth,
Yep.
whether they knew it or not, whether they had come to terms with it or not, whether they had words to describe it or not. We were all trans youth.
Yep.
And so the fact that we trans youth are under attack in this country, all trans folks are, but predominantly trans youth, because
Mhm.
they're the most vulnerable of the trans population.
Yeah.
And so, anytime I get a chance to address what the numbers actually are, anytime I get a chance to address what's really happening, anytime I get a chance to talk about treatment protocols and the W path and mental health, that's always my bread and butter. I love that. And then, I like to pepper in silly stories about things that happen at the gym, double entendres that, in
Yeah.
a gym setting, normal, but in the real world would raise a couple eyebrows. stories of just times that I put my foot in my mouth. I do that well and often. And so it's kind of a smorgasbord. I always laugh when I get people that are like, "Oh, your videos are angry and you're always mad." And I'm like, clearly you've never gone through my actual content. Because if you had, you'd see how many times I laugh about the word box in a gym setting and how many times, the word snatch comes up and we all laugh about it. So it's just, um, you know, I, I know that sometimes there are people in TikTok world and other social media places that see me as this sort of really angry, outspoken trans person. I think that that's the lens that they want to see me through. I
Yeah.
think that it fits their narrative and it helps their confirmation bias. Um, I'd like to think, though, that I am fairly um, even keeled for the most part until I get triggered. Dehumanizing language really is my big trigger.
Yeah.
But I'd like to think that I provide good stats and data and evidence to really support why trans folks have been here all along, will continue to be here, no matter what the legislation tries to acknowledge or erase us. We will still be here, whether we have laws that protect us or laws that don't.
Yeah. I mean, I think number one, humor is absolutely crucial to talking about this stuff. And we learn through being funny, you know?
Yeah,
And then,
yeah,
by definition, you're also being kind, which is direct and clear. But people who when they I feel like people when you're looking at a non-binary or a gender non-conforming or a trans person, you're looking at authenticity in action, and
right.
people just cannot wrap their brain around it because it's like you have to self-reflect to a point so where you literally I felt like you're tearing yourself apart on purpose, and
Hmm.
it's painful and it's brutal, and it's like, oh no, I know I'm gonna do this and it's gonna be fucking gorgeous when I'm done. and
Yeah.
and then you kind of get in this rhythm. But yeah, it's people like, oh right, you just actually are really uncomfortable with authenticity because you don't know how to do this at all.
Well, I know. And can you imagine? I mean, I always think about it from their perspective. Like, I can't imagine being so angry that somebody has found that level of joy and peace and happiness with who they are.
Yeah.
And to know that there are people in this world that exist that drives them to like complete and total meltdown anger every single day is just mind-boggling to me. That's one of my biggest things right now, when I'm addressing people, is why does somebody else's joy make you so angry? And it's honestly because they are so ingrained and bought into this idea that girls wear dresses and boys wear pants and
Mhm.
none the two shall meet. um that is so ingrained in their core, their psyche, their makeup, that anybody who lives outside of that belief set is just something that they can't even fathom. It's mind-blowing to them.
Yeah.
um they're joy killers, really. I mean,
Yeah.
the end of the day, they just don't want to see anybody experiencing joy, because to experience joy means that you have let go of others' expectations. And
Yes.
they're living under some pretty tyrannical expectations, I'm sure, from their upbringing and their community and their religion.
That's complex. Yes. And I feel that. I mean, and now this is Brene Brown's words, but joy is vulnerability. So if you don't know how to be vulnerable, you'll
Right.
never experience joy. And
Hmm.
wow, I feel sorry for you if you and can't get to that place. But anyway,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. We've got a very small but loud contingency in the United States right now that cannot find joy. And
mhm,
their way of dealing with that is by trying to take other people's away from them.
yeah. So speaking of joy, tell us about the space you create in your gym. you're a trauma informed personal trainer. You kind of,
Mhm.
or how would you describe what you do?
Yeah, no, I mean, honestly, I like that. We are trauma informed. We are a queer focused gym. 85% of our members, probably that number is a little bit higher now. I haven't run a new number, but 85% identify as part of the queer community. We use the term queer in the gym because we do have a lot of gender nonconforming, gender fluid folks in the gym, and
Mhm.
so depending on gender expression and sexual orientation, they can live in a couple different places
Okay.
under that umbrella. And so queer is just really an easy way for us to kind of give a very good overarching umbrella. Um, so we are trauma informed, but really what I would say is that we are queer focused, and that includes a lot of different things. So the queer community tends to have a lot more gender dysphoria and body dysmorphia to some degree, depending. And so we're very well versed in how to help people reconnect with their bodies. A lot of folks who come into our gym have actively not been engaged in their bodies for months, years, decades. And
Mhm.
so we help them embrace their current iteration of their body and build them closer towards a future iteration. We work with a lot of autoimmune disorders. The queer community tends to have disproportionately higher rates of diagnosis for things like Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, POTS, PCOS. So we work heavily with folks who have these various autoimmune disorders and making sure that we're training them in a way that will help optimize their health and not detract from their health.
Yeah.
Um, because that's hard. We also, a lot of our community is neurospicy. So we've
Mhm.
got folks that are anywhere on the neurospicing continuum. So we kind of go into our training with the assumption that everyone has some level of ADHD or some level of autism, and so we're constantly adapting our training so that we can really address folks who might need a different approach to
Yeah.
how traditional personal training and fitness training is done. So I would say, yes, we're trauma informed. And also, we have all of these other things that we address because as a queer community, we tend to have a lot of things happening at once. And so, over the last 7 years, we've really worked to hone our approach to make sure that we're holistically approaching training with the queer community so that they can come to a space where they feel safe and know that their bodies will be held um, safely, and that we will acknowledge who they are and where they are and how they are, and we will hold space for them.
Yeah. You said holding safely. That's such a for me such a warm phrase that took a very long time to really understand what that really feels like.
Yeah, there's a lot of queer folks who have had some very traumatic interactions and experiences with fitness, whether it's
Mhm.
PE in elementary school all the way up through athletics as teenagers and adults. And so we really see it as our opportunity to tear down that trauma and rebuild some better connections.
Yeah. So what would you want to share with the listeners about the joy of being you in your experience of being you?
I think kind of what we talked about earlier is, really once you hold on to that mantle of authenticity, um, living in that truth, living in that honesty makes everything else so much more manageable.